Hello, welcome to Stars, Cells, and God. My name is Jeff Zweerink. I'm joined by Dr. Hugh Ross, and we're going to be talking about surf and design for life and AI and art. Hugh, it's good to have you in the studio today. I'm just going to throw the floor over to you. Assume we're not talking about surfing waves, but I'll let you describe what we are talking about.
Well, Jeff, the two of us live in California. It's a beautiful state, maybe with the exception of the taxes and the government, but
Well, the state's beautiful.
the state's beautiful, right? And, what is the most expensive real estate in all of California in terms of where you want to buy a home?
I would guess it's got to be somewhere on the beach. I would guess Malibu, something like that.
Oh, you're exactly right. And what's interesting about beaches like Malibu, you not only have this beautiful shoreline, you got high crashing waves come in, so people can see the surf from their bedroom window. They can go out and enjoy the waves. And this paper published in Science Advances a few days ago, it's by 6 scientists who've done the most detailed long-term study of waves crashing on beaches, literally all over the world and over many years. And what they noticed is that when waves crash on a beach, you get a spray. The spray produces aerosols. They go up in the atmosphere, they seed rain. So it explains why when you're living near a seashore, you tend to get more fog, you get more rain.
Okay.
It's because of those waves. But they also picked up something new, which is the bubble effect. That when you have relatively high waves, you not only get a spray, you get a whole bunch of bubbles. Living in California, I'm sure you've seen that many times, where you get this, literally thousands of bubbles that get into the atmosphere when a big wave crashes on the shore. So, and they're basically making the point that we live at a time in the supercontinent cycle where you got the continents separated from one another, you got the big islands. It basically produces the most aerosols into the atmosphere.
So just simply because you've got more shoreline,
More shoreline.
more waves are going to be crashing into that shoreline and producing these aerosols.
And they make the point that this is a huge factor in rainfall over the entire planet. If it wasn't for these waves crashing into the shorelines, we wouldn't get the rainfall that we need to sustain our large population and the ecosystem of the planet.
Okay.
So we benefit from that. I mean, one good example of that is what you see in Northern California, where you got waves crashing on the shore, produces this fog, the spray, the bubbles, and you got the redwood trees that are like 380 feet tall at the max.
Right.
And it basically captures the fog and distributes the moisture all the way down into the ecosystem. None of that would be possible unless you had that shoreline with the waves crashing in the way they do.
I will say, I was just up in the redwoods not too long ago, and it is amazing how much vegetation there is. I mean, there's just, the floor of the forest is just littered with plants and pine cones and needles and stuff that's growing. It is very lush vegetation in there. And so it sounds like this is part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, if it wasn't for those waves, it wouldn't be like that. It would be a desert. And so what you got to enjoy there. And part of their research is showing that the effect of these waves in producing aerosols, fog, and rainfall is not just, say, the 100 yards from the beach.
Okay.
It extends in tens of kilometers.
Well, that's quite a remarkable range.
Yeah, so it's not just impacting the shoreline itself, it goes considerably inland. Now, of course, it diminishes.
Right.
But in some places of the world, the effect is noticeable as much as 40 or 50 kilometers in from the shoreline. So,
That's remarkable.
I mean, we kind of feel that here in the Los Angeles basin, that if you're within 20 kilometers of the beach, you do get what they call this effect of the clouds coming in.
Yeah, the onshore flow.
The onshore flow, the fog layer that comes in.
Right.
I mean, we live, about 40,
45 miles. So.
Yeah, from the coastline, and yet we do get that marine layer coming in.
No, you're right.
And that marine layer is because of the waves crashing on the shore. So And
So does the type of shore matter? Because I could imagine, go down to Long Beach areas like Newport Beach, you've got these really long, kind of flat, cool waves coming in and watching, and they're fun to body surf. Is that the kind of wave, or do you want something more violent where it's kind of crashing and hitting rocks and throwing stuff up? I would presume you'd
that's
want that.
probably the most significant contribution of these 6 scientists, because for a long time, scientists felt that, the impact is the wind driving the waves. And they said, yes, wind is a factor, but a much bigger factor is the height of the waves.
Okay.
And so the higher the wave height, the more aerosols, fog, and rainfall get generated. And so that's where the shoreline is a factor. You're mentioning Long Beach. It's kind of just a big long line with the beach just kind of shallowy going up in the elevation. You get small waves.
Right.
Whereas other parts not far from Long Beach, you get big waves because you have this depth of ocean and it suddenly rises to the surface,
Right.
which basically produces that big wave. And if you got a cliff that's right by the shore, that's going to produce a big wave. And
So you do want the wind though too, because the wind is what effectively generates all the water. It generates the stuff that gets translated into waves.
Right.
So it's the wind out there, and then also the shoreline as you're coming in.
But the terrain of what's underneath the water, the terrain which is above the water, all that's important. And that's another factor about the timing. I think we're living at an optimal time in the supercontinent cycle where we get all this amazing shoreline. But the other, and this wasn't addressed in the paper, but we are living in an interglacial.
Right.
Wherever we're living in interglacial after the most severe ice age in the ice age cycle. And that's produced fjords and canyons, coves along the shoreline, and these tend to amplify the height of the waves. And so because of the time in which we're living, we're getting the maximal production of these aerosols, fog, and rain as relative waves hitting on the shore. It explains why we're able to sustain billions of people on the face of the earth, our agriculture, the ecosystems, the beauty that we get to see.
Right.
I mean, that's another thing that was missing from the paper is that, hey, this produces all these economic benefits, but there's a beauty factor. I'm sure your family went to the Redwoods not just because you wanted to see tall trees. It was like, hey, as you just mentioned, just how lush it is.
Oh, yeah.
The beauty, and it just brings an emotion upon you.
It really does. In fact,
yeah.
This wasn't just going to the Redwoods. It was going back to the Redwoods because how much we enjoyed it the first time, just for the reasons you're talking about.
And so I think it's not just God designing our planet and putting us here at the optimal time to benefit from this fog and rainfall and aerosols. He also wanted us to appreciate the beauty of His creation. And there's a reason why people like to live near the beach, right?
Yeah, I agree.
There's a beauty factor there. So, but the paper ends with something that's a little disturbing, and that is that as wonderful as these high waves crashing into the beach are in terms of their beauty effect and how they impact our economy and our ecosystems, because of human abuse in the last few decades, it's not such a good idea to be spending a whole lot of time on high surf beaches. And the point they make is that the oceans today are filled with microplastics because of the way we dispose of our plastic waste. And so people living near these high surf beaches, there's actually data showing that they suffer a significantly higher rate of respiratory diseases because they're not just breathing in the fog, they're breathing in these microplastics.
The stuff that's in the fog, yeah.
And it's not just microplastics. They list several different toxins that we're breathing in as a result of humans not disposing of their technology in the manner that they should. So they basically end the paper saying, hey, we got to do better.
It's an interesting point, and it kind of relates to one of the points I want to bring up in my discovery is that, you talk about, plastics and how plastics were an innovation that provided a great benefit to humanity. I mean, we're sitting at a table that's composed of plastics. It just allows people to have structures, a lot of medical devices that we have. So plastics are not the problem, it's the human behavior with them.
Right.
This thing that can be a great tool, we also have to use well, or it can become a detriment. And it seems like that's, that fits with what you're describing here, is that it's not that plastics are a problem, it's that humans are not treating plastics well.
Yeah, we're throwing plastics away. I mean, you just come back from Southeast Asia. There's rivers there where you see more plastic at the top of the water than you do water.
Yes.
And that's all flowing under the ocean.
Right.
It gets there, decomposes into microplastics. There's actually huge beds of microplastic in the open ocean. And so the waves bring that in. It's up there in the aerosols. People are breathing that in. They're getting respiratory diseases. And as I mentioned, the paper talks about not just microplastics, but several human-induced toxins that are in the atmosphere, and basically making the point there's significant medical costs with this.
No.
So from an economic factor alone, we should do better at trying to ensure that we don't load our oceans up with all these microplastics and industrial toxins. And if we can eliminate even a few of them, that's going to significantly lower the health costs and the labor loss from people that are living, say, within 40 or 50 kilometers of a beach
Right.
shore.
I'm curious your thoughts on this question, because producing plastics allows you to carry more stuff. I mean, there's a whole lot of productivity benefits. A lot of AI is, we can be more productive.
Our health is better because of plastics.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, but this, if you're not careful, a focus on productivity can very easily, it's also more productive if you don't dispose of your waste well, because you can now get onto the stuff that actually generates more money, more enjoyment, whatever. How, in your assessment, how do you address that? Because if you just focus on productivity, I could make an argument that at least probably leads to the laziness or expediency of, I'll just throw this wherever instead of actually dealing with it well.
Well, you're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, Jeff, and it's like every technological advance, going all the way back to the invention of the wheel and the knife, has unintended consequences. And it's like we humans need to be wise and ethical enough to actually anticipate those unintended consequences and take steps to mitigate them. And so, yeah, we have a lot of unintended consequences with plastic. The authors of this paper are saying there are steps we can take to either minimize the damage or eliminate it altogether. And the more we minimize and eliminate, the less our health costs are going to be, the better lives people will have that live near beach shores. They also make the point that the number of people that live, say, within 50 kilometers of a beach shore, it's very high.
It is large, yeah. No, there's
It's
a very high population density along
Probably
the ocean
more than
shores.
half the people of the world live
Right.
within 50 kilometers of a beach. And so I said, this is not just
Big
a
impact,
few
yeah.
rich people that are living in Malibu. This is actually impacting billions of human beings.
No, I appreciate your discovery there, and it kind of ties in. And I've had this just interest in artificial intelligence, somewhat going back to the '90s, if you will. That's just where AI finally beat Garry Kasparov in chess, and so. It's this idea of, can we make something that's intelligent and better than humans? And it turns out those are two different questions, but
They
it's a
are,
fascinating
and Jeff,
question.
I'm older than you. It's not that chess tournament. For me, it goes back to when they replaced all the elevator operators with
All right, okay.
intelligent elevators. So it's like AI's been here for quite a while.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd call that AI, but I get what you're saying.
Right.
No, the technology has been around a lot, and there's kind of two components of AI that has fascinated me. One is it actually intelligent and what is it doing? And then two, as humans, how do we deal with it? And this particular paper, it was published in Science Advances. It's just called "Who Expands the Creative Frontier with Generative AI, Hive Minds or Masterminds?" And what they were looking at is in the last, I think in 2021, 2022, 2023, there were these AIs that you could give text and it would generate imagery out of them. And so what they were looking at is before and after that, did AI facilitate art advance or compared to just or did AI advance or did AI enhance the advancement of art development beyond what just people without non-adopters of AI were doing? And then beyond that, what could we, if it did, what could we say about it? Was it kind of like a union of human intelligence and the artificial intelligence was producing new things that couldn't be produced, or was it something else going on? And so what they did was, compared both the advances of non-adopter art and AI-assisted art, and just asked the question. They had some metric by which they said, okay, we're looking for innovations in art, and they talked about kind of distinguish between two types of innovation: psychological innovation and historical innovation. And psychological innovation would be, okay, so both you and I are artists, and you've been off working in Asia for many, many years. I've been working here in the U.S. I generate something that's new to me, but the artwork you've seen, it's already been around. It's a psychological innovation, but it's not a new innovation, as opposed to historical innovation, which is, this is something that's new that hasn't been seen before. And so they focused on that historical innovation. They called them artifacts. And at least as I'm reading it, it's just places where there's something come along that wasn't done before that you could say, that's innovative, that's new. And what they found, kind of not surprisingly, is that AI-assisted artists generated more historical artifacts than non-adopting artists did.
Right.
And it kind of doesn't, in some sense, that's not surprising, where AI, or especially as AI got more proficient, because even some of the first text-to-image art programs, even when those came out, that didn't happen. But as it developed, you kind of expected at some point AI assisting was going to help make it better or faster. But then they got in and explored and asked the question, okay, is this, or what is it that's causing this? And what they found, the kind of the takeaway was that when the AI adoption actually started producing more artifacts, the way it played out is that typically there were a few people who were generating more artifacts. And then after a while, that kind of got diluted out, and there were a lot more people generating occasional artifacts, which I find interesting, because kind of what it's saying is that there are people who learned how to utilize the technology to use their creativity to produce more things. So because, it's like if I'm a woodworker and I've just got a saw and I'm sitting there sawing, I'm going to produce a certain amount of things. If I now have a power saw and a power grinder and I give tools that allow me to do it faster, I'm going to produce more creative things. And that's what they're finding.
Right.
The AI allowed certain people to create more creative artifacts. And then after a while, more and more people became proficient in the AI or using the AI, and more people would occasionally produce artifacts. And so they talked about there were advances from masterminds originally, the occasional people, or the few people who had produced lots of artifacts. And then eventually you just got kind of the collective advance of a bunch of people working on things. But one of the things they did comment in their studies is that in their analysis, they could find no effects of the AI beyond just a productivity effect. So in other words, you're making humans more productive,
right,
and that explains all the productivity. So it's not that take the AI, and their combined intelligence and creativity is advancing something. It's that the AI is making the human more efficient and productive in doing things, which I think is an important thing to recognize and to appreciate, that this isn't human intelligence. Even though we're calling it intelligence, it's not human intelligence. Right now, it's just assisting the humans in using their intelligence to produce things that they wouldn't have been able to produce from resource limitations before.
Well, I'm smiling, Jeff, because this is reminiscent of a conversation I have with my older son.
Okay.
He's an artist, and he's using AI in his art.
Right.
And he was explaining to me, a lot of what an artist does is grunge work, and in particular, before you do a painting, for example, you got to produce an outline. You got to put, kind of the structures in there. It says AI can do all that for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he looks at this as saving time. And it says what really motivates an artist is to be set free to be really creative. And so if you're using these computer AI systems, basically to do, quote, the grunt work, getting the thing laid out, figuring out where the colors go, getting the patterns, the geometry right. It says a lot of it is geometry, getting, the perspectives, getting the sense of depth. It says AI can do all that for you. And when AI does all that for you, you're now set free to really be creative. And so what he was explaining to me is that, my art is taking on a new dimension because I can actually devote the time to actually go beyond what I simply wasn't able to do before. So I think it fits right into what you're saying from this paper.
Exactly. No, and I think
it makes art more fun.
Well, so this is a question. I don't doubt that,
Yeah.
but I could also imagine. I have kind of a ambivalent is not the right term for it, but my research that I do at UCLA on dark matter and gamma ray astronomy in the past, that research doesn't exist without computer technology. There's just so many calculations that need to be done. It's impossible if you had to sit down and write them out.
Right.
You can, in principle, be creative and do some shortcuts and do some short things that allow you to get it done. But, we're using detectors that have, these were fairly simple, that had 500, 1,000 pieces of data, but we were getting anywhere from 10 to 50 events per second. There's just no way to do the calculation. So without the computers, I can't do that. Now, that does require me learning how to program and actually figure out, is this a particularly relevant quantity or that quantity? There's a whole lot that goes into that. And so I'm fully aware that the better the technology is, I can now get at this is the question I want to get at. And so this stuff that took me a whole lot of time before, I can now streamline to get to that. On the other side, there is a part of me where a whole lot of what I enjoy about the research is wrangling the computer code to where it does what I intended it to do. And so I've kind of got this mix of enjoying the struggle of getting to the result as well as producing new results. And so it seems like there's a component of AI and every technology, so AI is not unique in this by any stretch, where by making things more efficient and easier, yes, you can focus on other things, but it's also taking away some of the enjoyment of learning how to struggle through those things. So if I don't have the artistic eye like your son would of being able to measure depth and those sorts of things, if I now have a tool that just allows me to produce art of a quality that your son does, there's part of that where I'm kind of missing out on the joy of learning how to do things. And so, it's like there's the good, Jeff, and the hard of that. So
that's probably what's in that paper is the best people for designing these systems are the ones that are the most expert in getting the result.
Yes.
So, you want an artist, for example, who understands the creativity they want, and therefore they write the necessary software. And usually it takes a team, because some people get their real joy out of writing the software to produce a desired result. Other people say, no, give me the software and I'm going to exploit it.
No, yeah, you're right. That's where most of my research is going.
What I've noticed, just in the research I've done, say at Caltech, is you need the partnership. The people who are writing the software need to partner with the people that are wanting to use the software, and there needs to be a good back and forth so that you get the optimal results. So.
Well, and that actually, I think, plays out in this hive mind part of that. That there's occasionally the mastermind who says, here's a tool that allows me to produce beyond what I could before. But then, even I would say a lot of scientific advances kind of have that hive mind. That's why we publish things in journals. It's you do some research, I do some research, we write it up in a journal, somebody reads it and says, oh, wait, hey, this connects with what's over here, and let's go do something. It's
right.
If you didn't do your part, I didn't do my part, somebody didn't read it and make the connection, I think that's a lot of what goes on in there, and that's pretty fascinating too. There's also a part of me that steps back and says, it is cool that AI allows these masterminds to produce stuff that couldn't exist before. It's also neat that there are these, for lack of a better word, less talented people who, by working together, can explore and fill in niches in there. But I now, as an outsider to the art world, I now have so much art that's out there that it's almost overwhelming to figure out what's actually the good art. And so to the artist, this is all really cool. To the non-artist, it almost makes me hard to engage in there. Or there's so much that's coming out. I think there's a bigger, or it's not so much that it's just hard. I think there's a bigger problem is that you end up producing so much mediocre stuff in the midst of the few advances that most people aren't even aware of what could be good out there. So you dilute where it's harder, what gets produced is better and people see what could be, whereas you get so much dilution, most people just get used to the run-of-the-mill drudgery stuff and miss. And so I think...
Well, since that's 95% of what's out there, that's going to be an impact. And so...
But it comes part and parcel with the technology. And so the technology allows the advances, but if we don't use it well, it also can minimize the enjoyment of the art for the most people. And so, is it a net good or not? It's a little more complicated question. And I just think having both, understanding that bigger picture is kind of important.
Yeah, I think you also get the best results where you're using people in the right slot where they're really getting a lot of enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's where you're going to get the greatest productivity. So making sure.
I just get, so I was just reading through 1 Corinthians 12 today, and Paul's talking about all the various gifts in there. And it's like, God's kind of designed us with gifts for the building up of the church, but, he's extroverts and introverts, people who are kinetic, people who are more thoughtful, all sorts of different personalities, that all of that makes the body of Christ, that there's this, it works well when we're in relation properly with other people. And
well,
that's
I
what
can
you're
take
saying
you to
there.
another text, Romans 12, which lists, 7 motivational gifts for serving God and serving others. And if you read that text carefully, each follower of Jesus Christ gets one of those gifts, only one, which forces you to work with people who have the other 6 gifts. So it's like God is ensuring that we work in relationship with one another, saying, no one's going to have all 7 gifts. You're going to have to work with other people.
Right.
And you're going to actually have a lot of fun doing that.
Well,
So-
I think that's profound because that's kind of one of the points I try and make. For a while I was kind of just very negative about AI because I did see a lot of the perils that it brings up. But more and more, it's like I'm recognizing that if we apply Christian principles, if we are using AI to advance our creativity and build community and relationships, it's going to do things better. Now, the question is, like with plastics, if we use them well, they're going to advance and help us live better. And if we don't, we're going to have problems with that. And there's corporate problems, and I think there's also a lot of individual problems. And we tend to want to blame, and instead of figuring out, hey, what can I do? How can we live well? I think AI has this capacity that if we think rightly and have that kind of Christian mindset of how do we use this well, how do we advance our enjoyment as well as the enjoyment of society, I think we've got great potential with it.
I think we do. And I was just reading an article literally this morning how people are anticipating AI advance is going to be such that we no longer have to work 5 days a week. We can work just 2. I said, nah, that's not going to happen. Every technological advance has set us free to do things we simply didn't have time to do before.
Well, but no, I agree. But even your comment, well, we can only work 2 days a week. God designed us to work.
He did.
We're fulfilled when we're working hard. So this is where I think Christianity gives a very robust view of how to live. That if we say, hey, here's how the Bible describes how we're designed, and we live that way, we will use AI to advance that instead of saying, hey, we can do so much work with our AI that we only need to work 2 days a week.
Yeah.
I think people will say, no, I need to work to be fulfilled, and they're going to do that. But I think a lot of people will get lulled into that false narrative that we don't need to work anymore, and they'll end up suffering as a result of it. So.
Yeah, God's setting us free to do work that we never were able to do before.
And that
He's
designed
for
us to
work.
do. Yeah, exactly.
And He designed us to enjoy work. And a lot of people think work is a drudgery. That's where AI, I think, is going to really help. It's delivering us from the drudgery that's in our labor. I
Well,
mean,
I will reserve judgment on whether people look at it that way or not. I agree that's the right way to look at it, but we'll see how it plays out.
yeah, after all, people are sinners, right?
Amen,
And
amen.
people
So,
can tend to be lazy, so we got to take that into account. All right.
well, thanks for listening in today, and I want to encourage you to join the discussion in the comments below. Remember to like this video, to subscribe for more content. RTB releases Stars, Cells, and God each Wednesday. You can find it here on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Take this video, go share it with a friend, have a great discussion about it, and remember, the more we learn about science, the more reasons we have to believe in the God of the Bible.